You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hello, happy Wednesday. Best day for growth is hump day, right? Today's interview is another fun one, and it's with Jordan Hill, who is the VP of Finance and Operations at #Paid, another Toronto-based startup. #Paid is a company that helps social media influencers get paid by matching them up with companies who want to advertise via influencers who dominate different niches. And I think this is a continued trend that I'm seeing, where we're seeing a polarization in the marketing world, with bigger guys continue to dominate on a global basis, but we're also seeing a large number of leaders and influencers in these small pockets, and they're gathering really loyal followings in that way. Like, that's how, for me, I get influenced to buy products themselves. And so we explored the company itself with Jordan, and also his career path. And so before #Paid, Jordan was a fellow Big Four auditor like myself, but like many, he knew that the auditing path wasn't for him. And in fact, his partner told him that it wasn't for him either. And so after which he went into being a career development coach. He talks about his journey as being a solo coach, and then how he teamed up with a partner and they developed a product to start licensing and selling it to organizations. And so we go through all the trial and tribulations of entrepreneurship in these varying stages, and also dig into what he actually does at #Paid, and also why he actually wouldn't be doing what he is right now if he had tried to jump straight from accounting instead of taking this windy road through coaching. And also, as always, I would appreciate any support you guys can give to the podcast as listeners by leaving a 5-star rating on iTunes. It really helps the podcast reach a wider audience, and also it would really also help if you would also leave a review on iTunes as well. I read all the reviews, and after I read them, I'll definitely try to give you a shout out in this morning intro in the next episode. And so now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Jordan Hill. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Today on the podcast, we have Jordan Hill. Jordan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Jordan is the VP of Finance and Operations at #Paid. And so to start off with, Jordan, can you tell the audience what #Paid is? What do you guys do?
Absolutely. So #Paid is a creator marketing platform. What that is really working with socially influential people on various social channels and connecting with the brands to run campaigns. Really, the problem I'm trying to solve is that how does a brand get in front of the eyeballs of a young consumer? No one's really listened to radio. You've got ad blockers on our TV. No one's really listened to newspaper. And obviously social media has been that main medium. And connecting with these influential people to create campaigns that we find are relevant and authentic with their followers.
Okay. And so then, are you on all kinds of social media, or are you focusing on a certain kind of social media, a certain kind of influencer?
So we're on predominantly Facebook and Instagram, and to a degree Snapchat, Twitter. But we found that the way that visual content, like pictures, captivates audiences, many people are on Instagram, and that seems to be about 80% of where most of our business comes from.
Gotcha. And how many users do you have right now, the clients?
Yeah, so in terms of on the influencer side, we've got 18,000 influencers. And
wow.
What is an influencer is the litmus test we have is 5,000 followers on a specific social media channel. So let's say 5,000 followers on Instagram and a minimum 1% engagement rate. We set those as tests because what we found was if an individual who buys their followers, they're going to have low engagement. And so that's been that sort of first step. And then from there's qualitative aspects too.
Okay.
And so North America, globally, we're increasing at a rapid rate, which is awesome in terms of influencers. In terms on the brand side, it depends. There's a lot of Fortune 500 brands that we work with: Coca-Cola, Toyota, Audi. The list goes on, and we hope to keep that number growing as well.
And in terms of so then 5,000 users. So are you saying that if I got 5,000 users on my Instagram account, I can start making money?
We can get you connected, that's for sure.
Oh wow!
Can't wait to see that happen.
I put all my lifting videos on Instagram, and I only have, I think, 300 something followers.
Oh, so you're a long way away, but we can get you there.
One day,
don't worry.
One day.
You can still sign up on our website, and we actually give you tips and tricks of how to grow your followers.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I have plenty of friends who are food bloggers, so I think they might actually benefit from this.
A big segment we get is foodies, fashion and beauty, lifestyle, so travel, outdoors, and all that. So there's lots of brands that are looking to connect with individuals. Influencer marketing is a very interesting time because a lot of high quality influencers are coming out, and that's sort of the next evolution of social media, because before it was just your friends and family. And now we have these high quality content creators, and they're really rising to the top, and that's how they're gaining these followers. And so for me, my favorite follower is at Braden, Braden. You should check out his Instagram. He's in Western Canada and does a lot of travel and outdoor shots. And he influences me because really I see all these amazing traveling shots, and I just can't wait to check out. I went to BC actually because of him. So he's been partnering up with our Canadian Tire Woods campaign and a couple other ones. So that's how we really try to channel that I'd call brand symmetry or brand synergy.
Okay, so you do matchups for that.
Yeah, so our platform obviously everyone has an AI algorithm these days, but that's specifically what it is to really connect on various qualitative and quantitative attributes. So then a brand would say, this is our objectives of the campaign. We want to appeal to this type of demographic, and then we plug that into our platform, and then they'll pop out of those 18,000 influencers, what are the most highly relevant influencers, and depending on the size of the campaign, we'll pick X degree amount of influencers posting a certain amount of times, and that becomes a campaign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so, you're the VP of Finance and Operations here, and I think if I saw the earlier parts of your career, it might have been very obvious just because you were an accountant in Laurier, and after that you went to PwC, fellow Big Four accountant, and if there's a gap there, but if that gap was filled by what you're doing now, I might have considered, it seems very traditional.
Yeah.
But that gap is where I think the weirdness happens, where you went off to be a career development coach, and also started being part of a leadership academy. And so, can you kind of take me back to all this where you go into accounting, it seems like it's all set, you go to PwC. Where's the inflection point? What's going on?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I did 3 4-month terms at PwC. So I graduated, and like any young graduate, you're ready to take on the world. And I'm Big Four. PwC. This is great. I want to be a partner.
Right. So you did all 3 co-op terms as well at PwC.
And when you do 4 months, you're not really they say that at the 6-month mark is when the honeymoon period's over, and engagement will dip materially if an individual's not engaged. And so that's where that 4 months, you get a teaser, then you go back to school, and you're like, okay, school sucks, go back to work, and that making money part's good. And then what I found was specifically too, after, the dust settles after the UFE, and you're right back to work, this is what you're going to do for the foreseeable future. I was like, at first I was auditing mutual fund and hedge funds, and I was like, man, this sucks. There was just no enjoyment out of it, very repetitive. And so then I thought, okay, let's try something different. So within that group, there's the Emerging Company Services, which is for auditing Toronto-based startups. And obviously, startups being interesting, I thought, okay, that's the next logical step. And I worked with great people there, no matter what team I did, but really the nature of the work auditing was not something that appealed to me. And I somewhat struggled too in that work. I think that when your heart's not there, your head's not there. And that was probably the first time in my career where I was working really hard but not getting the results. I wasn't performing well. And so I had a bit of a career crisis, a quarter-life crisis, you could say.
Kind of taking back, when you say it wasn't going well, so what's the indicator? How do you know that you're not doing well in audit?
Well, again, like my manager saying that like the work that I'm doing is not up to performance. On my performance reviews, I wasn't meeting expectations. And if you can think of an A-type individual, like anyone who goes to a Big Four firm, you're used to performing well and meeting expectations. And the odd part was I could see it if I was not putting in a full effort, but I was working really hard. And so, when you see the process is there, but the results aren't there, it makes it even more frustrating. So you try even harder, and then it doesn't work out. And so then I thought, am I dumb? Like, it was sort of this weird thing, because at that age you're not really that aware of who you are and what you can expect. And so then all you have is this sort of most recent feedback in your career, because your career is so young. You're okay, well, like, am I some sort of failure? You sort of start panicking to a degree. And it kind of boils up to, especially in a Big Four professional services firm, just because you're with a lot of fellow A-type individuals, a lot of high performers, and the expectations of the role are so high. And so with that, it just brought on a lot of just, is this for me type of aspects. And so I was sort of struggling to grab onto something that I felt I was good at and that I would enjoy. And so that sort of led me to the career detour that you foreshadowed there, which was a career development coach. And so essentially I got really into professional development books. Like, first book I read was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And from there, there's so much out there. And so I just got more and more reading other various books, and anything from like the 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss to even there's a litany of books. Anyways, the bottom line is I kept reading more and more, and then someone sort of made a comment like, "Oh, like you should be an executive coach," and I was like, "Well, what's that?" And then shortly after that, I met an executive coach, and then I actually got coached by them because I was super interested in what they were doing. It was actually my friend's mom. And then so from there, I had this obsession with like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm not meant to be an auditor, not numbers, people. This is what I'm supposed to do. And so then I was so focused on how do I become a coach? And by then I had wrapped up. So I was close to becoming certified, or like get my designation. I had the idea. I said, you know what? I'm going to be a coach. And I had this vision of at that point too, helping people like me who try and succeed in what they do, and find work that aligns with their strengths, values, and passions.
And so you were getting executive coaching while you were at PwC.
Yeah.
And what kind of results did you see? There's the adage where someone asks like, oh, why did you become a life coach? And so they say, oh, well, my life coach, I have my own life coach, and from getting all the life coaching, I decided to be a life coach.
Yeah, honestly, it is so, like, life coaches are very interesting individuals. There are some very great ones. There's a lot that are questionable. And I've met a lot of different types of coaches through my coaching journey. And in this one, I liked with executive coaching that there's still a professional lens to it, where you're helping professionals, executives. But maybe the entitled millennial part is, if you're trying to be executive coach and you haven't had much work experience, what executive wants to coach you? But I was just so determined to, I think, just go deeper in the coaching. So, I said, well, then I'll help young professionals like myself. And it was this, as you sort of talk more with your friends, read more, you're starting to formulate sort of maybe theories or programs or hypotheses. And I remember just like going home at night and just developing this program. And it was called In Charge. And so it was this whole thing, like my coaching company's going to be called In Charge Consulting. And effectively it was like, if you can build the right habits, then you can really optimally perform, right? But in order to perform well, the one before that is you have to be aware of what you're good at. So if you can first establish what you're good at, that state of flow, as they call it, so a mixture between, again, like what's important to you and what you're good at, then it's a matter of, okay, now you found that, now it's how do you execute it, and it's building those specific habits, whether it's like incorporating like meditation and productivity breaks and timing with your energy. And so I had it all sort of mapped out. It's so clear, at least to me. And then when you go to the market, I remember just going to I first called it professional lifestyle consulting because, again, I was still a bit weird in the coach aspect, especially because I didn't have any formal coach training. But I remember I was at an entrepreneur event, and I still remember that event, and I had the business cards made, and I remember so embarrassed, and I was trying to the first person I went to, so what do you do? I'm a professional lifestyle consultant. And they're like, what? And then I try to explain it, face getting red, give the card, and I try again. I go to another person. And so there's these two guys I remember, and they're older, and they just laughed in my face, and they're like, what the hell is that? And I just remember just trying to persevere. And I remember I actually met another guy who's older, and he actually once he got past the initial part, actually had a ring to it. So that was sort of if I was clinging on to some positivity, that's certainly what it was. But I just remember again, if I saw someone say that to me, I'm sure I'd have the same reaction. But it was sort of that first sort of wow, maybe it's making sense in my head, but not making sense to other people.
Yeah. So
that's when I started more into coaching, and I actually applied to Adler. So in June 2015 is when I graduated. So I got my designation probably a month earlier, and from there I did the coaching training for 3 months there, and I realized, okay, so maybe it's not about optimizing an individual's performance, but let's sort of simplify it a bit more and talk about, there's a lot of young people who have confusion in their career, the whole millennial at work issue. So it's I think that's where I can live. That's where we should be. And so that's where it evolved into a career development coach. And so then I created Metcalf Hill Coaching and Development. The name Metcalf Hill was because my late grandfather, Bill Metcalf, was a big inspiration for me, because he's the one that actually gave me my first book, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I remember us used to have long conversations with him about various professional development books. And so the summer that I had launched Metcalf Hill, previously that he actually passed away. So I was sort of paying a tribute to him, and so I had a classy ring to it. So I used that. And so from there, I was coaching individuals. I obviously start off a lot for free, because not many people want to pay someone who is starting off. And it was really interesting because as you coach more and more people, I found that there was just this recurring theme. A lot of people were complaining or couldn't really articulate their issues because they lacked that awareness. They really lacked what is important to them, what they enjoy doing. It's really simple questions, or why do you work? And the more you think about it, there's been no mechanism set in place in school to support that. And unless I think you have very supportive parents who have long conversation with you won't get that anywhere. And so you have this situation where you have these people going to school, what's right in front of you, the next grade or that next test. And you're, as any high performer, it's, try and get an A+ or try to get an A. Okay, so now you're in high school. Okay, how do you go to that university, say Queens or Western? Okay, try and get a 90 average. And so you're so focused, right, doing that. You're like, okay, I want to be in Queens engineering or Ivy in business, but why? And so that's what a lot of people, they don't ask themselves throughout it, but it's sort of either pressure from themselves, their parents, or their friends. They want to be a management consultant, a banker, an engineer, a doctor, and they just don't become satisfied because they don't have that. They never had a situation where you had that check of, okay, does this fit what I want to do, my personality type, my needs? And so I think what was interesting just talking to a lot of fellow young professionals was that recurring theme. And so I had still done some coaching, and I got some luck with workshops. My goal was to try, and the ideal stage was that I knew if I could coach people, I could really increase the engagement of a workforce of a company. And so the goal is to sort of be this in-house coach on retainer. They go in and I can sort of do coaching programs with them. But companies aren't ready to, at least when I was doing it, they weren't ready for coaching. It's like in the 1980s, no executive got coached, but now it's every executive has a coach, and it felt like it was only time before everyone has access to a coaching resource. I'm just seeing the trend of coaching. And So I tried to sell the coaching program. It wasn't work, but then it'd be okay. I'll do a workshop. So I had some luck there, and I was coaching, and it lacked that impact. I was sitting one-on-one in a conversation, but I was like, I want to do something bigger and broader. And so about a year into it, I met a fellow coach named Joel, and he was doing something very interesting where he was taking also young individuals and putting them through what he called at that time the Discover program. And so he founded the Global Leadership Academy, and he had 3 phases to it. So there's, I think, Discover, Explore, and Discover, Aware, and Explore. And the net of it was that first one, Discover, was all about building self-awareness, and it was very eerily similar curriculum to my coaching. And so I was like, hey, you're doing something cool attacking the same problem. I'm doing something cool, and like we both are struggling with, I think, the momentum we want to do. Why don't we just put the best of our programs together and make this thing online? Because like anything, software is scalable, and we thought that this is a repetitive thing, that if we could just make this a software, we could really help a lot of people and maybe sell us to companies or universities. And so I then bought in as a co-founder to the Global Leadership Academy, and we focused on Discover, and we actually spent the next 4 months crafting the program, and then we tested it with individuals. So as we built it, we tested it out, and we actually sold our first program before it was even built to a client, and I don't want to say who, just because, just in case they're listening. But yeah. I just remember it was a cool smoke and mirrors thing. Show them wireframes and be like, or show them what we do is you record a screenshot and have it move around and stuff. But the net of Discover was, again, there was 6 different modules that provided a comprehensive report on of an individual about their career. And so we had just huge aspirations. We're like, this is going to make us millions. We're going to sell it to every company. We've solved the millennial issue. And we actually had a lot of feedback sessions with millennials. I happen to be part of a group called Millennial Crusaders, and it was just a monthly meetup with 50 to 60 like-minded young professionals. And so we had tested with them, and it was great feedback. So if you think about it, you get a lot of great feedback from the users. You're able to sell your first one before you even made it. You're thinking, okay, this is something. This is
you
great.
have your product market fit, and you're like, okay,
exactly,
we can just
right?
scale it now.
I remember Lean Startup, so I knew it was all about get feedback before you develop, and so I thought I was doing everything right. And so then we get it built. We do it with that one customer, and it happened to be just a one-off thing for their new starts as part of onboarding. And so then that was and then so we really spent just trying to meet with HR people and sell it. But it's hard to sell to HR. They're used to getting sold a lot, and I just remember just shaking my head, having these great conversations, but at least nothing. What really also annoys me is selling to Canadians, because they're so polite and they'll lead you on, and then they'll just ghost on you. So I remember we're and I'm going to call them out as RBC. We had a string of great meetings, and I'm like, holy crap, we're selling to RBC. This is this is going to be it. This is the big one. And then it just as it goes up the ladder, it just got cut, because RBC has this program where their procurement says if there's something available internally, then you have to make a huge case why to buy it. And so RBC apparently had this crappy program internally that they did, and so they said unless we really work hard and sell this our sort of sponsor within RBC, then we can't. And so it was just it was that. So basically you start up this high, right? As I mentioned, you're thinking and again, my inner accountant, I'm doing the modeling and just being oh my god, we can make $100K in 4 or 5 months here, this is unreal. So I'm picturing the next apartment I'm gonna get, and just because at that point I was living at home, and I just moved out to a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 other guys. They're my friends, but I was okay, this is, you're starting to see dollar signs, and you're doing your vision boarding. And yeah, I used to get really humbled, because the product market fit is very difficult with this product, because you're solving a very complex non-tangible problem, which is that, okay, so if employees are self-aware, so what? And you can say okay, it increases employee engagement, and so it's a lot of inferring. And so, especially if you're selling in a business where people's jobs are in line, if they make a wrong decision, then they're very risk averse. And so, unless you paint a clear picture, it's difficult. Like, you'd have some forward thinking people who say, you know what, yeah, I know millennials are a problem, but, you know, and the second part is like, so we had the user testing, but were our users the actual individuals as millennials, or were they actually the HR decision makers? Because another problem we had was that Discover takes about 6 hours, oh, not 6 hours, 4.5 hours to do for these 6 modules. And so it's a long, comprehensive program, and individuals like it, but do you want your employees on top of the cost of paying for it, spending 4.5 hours doing this? And the second part is that, what is the next step there? Is it, you know, we want to be very scalable, right? And so a lot of people are like, oh, can you do a workshop? Or if you sell these licenses, can you do a workshop after? Where we're like, you know, the ultimate thing would be, you know, a company buying it for their employees and onboarding, and then it's just a recurring, you know, thing. Hey, you know, let's say company X hires 100 people a year. It's like they're buying 100 licenses, so you can get that recurring revenue model. But it was a round hole square peg. And so I just remember we were just sort of like really trying to make it work, and it was challenging based on what we thought would be good. And so I think that as the entrepreneur, you know, there's that, like, akin to that honeymoon period. So, you know, I was like, okay, I became a coach, and then I came sort of like a tech startup entrepreneur to a degree.
Yeah. So how does that timeline work? So you quit PwC, and
yeah, so June 2015, quit PwC.
Yeah, and then you go into, is that when you started to just make your business cards and go to all these entrepreneurial conferences?
Actually, I started so I'd say probably in the couple months leading up, I would go to these.
Okay, so you kind of beta tested it a little bit.
Beta tested it, yeah, but yeah. I had such high conviction that, you know, I was like, okay, in charge professional lifestyle consulting may not be what it is, but I know if I go to Adler coaching school, do that program, I'll get what I need to then really do well. And, you know, I think I get a lot of people who like ask me, like, especially as it was in the lead up to like leaving, or as I left, they're like, oh, like, what's it like to be an entrepreneur? Or like, what's it like to like actually quit PwC? And it's weird. It's just like at that moment, I was like, again, it was just like, I just felt that was the right thing. I thought it'd be insane just to stay, because I wasn't happy, and I was certainly not, you know, doing what I thought was aligning with my values. And so that's what made that decision very easy. It wasn't really, it's like I had to do it. It wasn't like a, you know, so.
Yeah, I think I tell people this too, when every time I would quit a job, which I've done multiple times now, there's a sense of enlightenment, kind of also like an unburdening feeling, where at the end of it, like you stress leading up to the moment, and then it just happens, and it just feels like, yeah, it was the thing to do. There
was no holy crap. Like, for me, it was like I left on a Friday. Actually, like, it's sort of like the stars aligned, because my birthday was June 20th, and that was on a Saturday, and the Friday was June 19th. So it's sort of like end of week, day before my birthday, and the 25th birthday too. So it's sort of this like, that sort of reinforced that this
like
is
a new start for your quarter
exactly,
life,
right?
Yeah.
And so it just felt all right. Like, it felt like that was the thing to do, and you know, so I did that, and I remember too, like, it was like I was so excited to get started, and like, so that Friday and that Monday, I got up at 6:30 and went to the gym, and then went right to work. And I remember seeing. My friend saw me, and he's like, dude, like, are you an entrepreneur? Are you supposed to be like sleeping in? Like, what, you just quit on Friday? And I'm like, man, I want to like get up and start developing this program. And so like, that was like a great summer, because like I still had money in the bank, and my program didn't start till September. So I just had tons of books that I was trying to read and like really learn as much as possible, and do like some sort of try and validate my coaching program, my coaching skills too. And so, yeah, it was just like I read probably like 40 books that summer. It was just so, I was
nice.
just like, it was like 9 to 5, just read books, or like just try to develop your website, and just like, yeah.
And so, okay, you're reading tons of books, you're learning, you're getting the knowledge, and then you do your coaching thing in September, and then after about 3 months, now you got the coaching certificate, and that's when you go off on your own and start getting your first clients. Were they like mainly friends and family that
so
came on as first clients?
The first paid client was actually it was a friend.
Okay, so after you said how you started off being unpaid, and then you eventually got a friend to start paying you.
Yeah,
Nice.
So she was trying to switch her jobs, and we were actually I think we were at a party one time, and I was just talking to her about it, and she's like, "Oh my god, like let's do it, like let's sign up for 4 sessions," and I'm like, "Yes, this is sweet." And so I can't remember what he charged, but it's like for coaching, like you have to do it. Like to make it sustainable, like an organization has to sponsor you, because I remember I had like a mentor who was a coach who had done a lot of consulting stuff for Deloitte and other big companies, and he said, don't go the B2C market, because you're just going to try and like people don't want to pay what you get deserved, and as a coach you have to pay a prime rate because you're not working 40 hours a week. Like your billable chargeable hours would probably be half that, and so that's the difficulty too, because as you're starting out, you're trying to like, what rate should you charge yourself? And I remember in hindsight, I was charging way too low. And I remember doing, for one organization, I did like a 1 hour session. I charged like $75. And I thought, I was like, oh my God, like that's, but like in hindsight, like that is way too cheap. And I think also your price reflects the perceived quality. And so that could have been also a hindrance to, a lot of possible opportunities. So luckily, as I realized the cash flow was draining quick because the cash inflow from coaching wasn't sustaining any sort of lifestyle, I was working part-time, basically working in between the CFO and the controller or senior accountant at a startup called Exogenic.
Okay, so you found a role to continue.
Yeah, so it worked out perfectly because it was 2 days a week. And the CFO was very easygoing and was like, choose whatever days you want to come in, but this is the general scope of work. And so part of it was they were transitioning their accounting system, accounting software. So I was doing the rollover work. So it wasn't really deadline driven. And so that worked out really well. And then also like he sort of started throwing stuff down at me because he liked what I was doing. So I was like, sure. And for me, it was like, that was just strictly paying the bills. And I was like, I can't wait for this day to be done so I can go back and actually do my like developing my company and my work. And so, so I remember my sort of master plan at the time too, I forgot to mention, was I started blogging and I wanted to make a website. So this whole idea where as I blogged, I'd build followership. That followership would convert into opportunities such as like creating a book and paying that, or at least be lead generation. And I remember speaking to you in our first conversation, but like, it starts off great and then it plummets. I just remember it was like, I was building like a really good followership. So I'm like trying to forecast, okay, like where would my subscriber count be? But then it just like, all of a sudden after like 2 months, it fell off the rock, and just like, I was struggling for readers, and I thought my content was getting better. And I'm getting so frustrated, and that just led to the inconsistency with publishing my articles, me being self-conscious, and I actually eventually stopped doing it. But I found it like a cathartic experience, because you're like really just like, it helps you just sort of process certain things. And so I've always tried to think about picking it back up, just throwing random stuff on LinkedIn. Like, I think what is interesting about certain successful bloggers is that they don't try to scope themselves too much with a plan, that they really just try and write what's organically on their mind type of thing, which I think that if I ever got back into, I'd do that. I wouldn't want to, like, because I had originally scoped it a little too hard into like career advancement and career progression, and it was sometimes you just struggle for ideas, and that gets frustrating.
Yeah, it's so like, I guess from my experience,
yeah,
I think tomorrow I'll be hitting like month 5 of having been pumping out weekly products in a sense. So every Tuesday I send out an essay that's like around 2,000 words. And so I think for me, the trouble has been actually, how do I categorize what I'm writing? Because it's just kind of everywhere. Yeah. And so I think I got past the initial hurdle of the idea generation part, where like right now, so like my habit is every morning I write 300 words.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Force it out type of thing.
It's just 300 words, you just pump it out. It's only about a paragraph or two, but now I have a set of folders. So I have like 6 different folders that's systematized. So folder number 1 is idea, and then it goes to in progress, and then it goes to first draft, then grammar edit, then publish ready, and then publish. And my idea folder has, I think right now, about 60 documents are just ideas.
I always find the ideas are always the easy one, and
Yeah.
then it becomes, okay, what does this mean? How do I stretch it out into an article?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well.
But over time, like what I found is like when you go through it, like I'll use a keyword search in like Evernote, and I usually have like 4 different ideas that have the same keyword, and then just like clump it together, and it just forms kind of an article.
Yeah.
And then over time, I'm just constantly writing it, and like this morning, I launched my essay for the morning, and this one was long. It's like a 3,000 word one.
Yeah.
But I've been working on it for about the last 3 weeks, and there's those weird gaps where I'll have an immediate inspiration and something hits, and I just write a 1,500 word article in like a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is published ready. Basic grammar, it's good to go. And
Yeah.
then because a big hit, and then I pumped this one out today, and I don't think anyone's really. I don't know how many people have actually read it. I don't think that much. Like I thought this would be a big hit, but it hasn't been. And yeah, it's weird. I had that big launch bust, like launch boom, and then it became a huge bust right after the first month afterwards, and now it's climbing back up, but now it's just looking volatile.
Yeah, it becomes illogical, and then you can't get a feel for where it should be.
Yeah, so I'm just constantly trying to just pump it out and seeing, the goal is to last a year, so we'll see. I think I've close to 25 essays now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so we'll see. So then for you, so you did the blog, and it's not kind of working out, and then, you, like you mentioned, like your mentor is saying, oh, you want to, have a sponsor, like doing one-on-one, it's not that scalable. And
yeah, so
then,
that was where like hit the organizations. So that's where I was trying to knock on the doors of companies. And so again, like the coaching stuff, just it wasn't there. They'd say that program sounds interesting, super great, but we just don't coach our frontline employees. And it's funny because, again, like having also like been on the other side now, where I'm setting budgets and stuff for our HR, I realized how I could have positioned it to make it easier, because really $1 is not $1 in an organization. It's if you can really fit it under a certain theme, then it makes it easy. So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of times I got the feedback was said, oh, well, do you do stuff for our managers? And for me, I was so focused on like the young employees. I'm like, no, like this is for young employees so they can help, like, be better individuals with their managers. And really what they're saying was, we do a lot of training for managers because that's an easy budget to allocate to, and I'm also seeing the other side. So if I had just focused on first-time managers, it would have been a different process, because they would have budget and timing for it. Because if a company's investing to hire someone to be a manager, there's 2 parts. So one is that obviously they think that they're good and capable of their job, and then they want to further invest in it. But the second part is they're also managing other employees. There's the multiplication effort. So obviously they want to make sure that this manager is adequate, especially as a first-time manager. And so it was funny that there was a thing where I'm like, oh man, like that would have been like, you always think of what if, like if a 25-year-old Jordan walked in, like what would have sold it type of thing. And that would have been one that like aligned to it. So it's interesting because, again, like I was trying to tell this coaching thing. It was, again, they'd always say very interesting, but ... And then it was like, well, why don't you do a workshop? And it's like, one-off workshops you can't really pay rent with type of thing. And so, I mean, it's funny because I couldn't get business advice from many coaches, because a lot of coaches themselves aren't good at business people. And that's why they were coaching, I guess. But there was my one sort of mentor was, and unfortunately wasn't as available as I wish, because he was actually successful. But I do remember that was the one specific piece of advice. And so it really is hard to make a good living off coaching unless you have a good sort of business model mapped out, or at least a good portfolio of individuals. And what's interesting is in coaching school, they never really taught the business side of coaching. And so he had a lot of people who are sort of free thinkers and sort of spirited individuals. But when it came to, okay, how's that going to sell? They never really taught that. And that's something that like would be very important, because all these people graduated from it, and it's a lot of them did struggle with sort of building, like a very few percentage of coaches actually can make a living off of it. It's almost like the whole real estate agents, where a certain percentage can actually do it full time. And so that's the same thing with coaching.
Mm-hmm. And so then you go off on your own and you realize, okay, this ain't gonna work. And then you meet Joel and you guys decide, okay, now we're gonna, we've got it. We're gonna sell this program to business. It's gonna be scalable.
I had finally found the code, because I knew there was a good idea. Like I had conviction around it. Maybe it's just not living in the right way.
But now that business is different, right? Like you first did coaching because you wanted to help these people. You wanted to do this one-on-one thing, and now you're just making products, and you're not talking to people much anymore, or like coaching them. How did you relate with that? Like, how did you deal with that?
It was interesting because I definitely liked presenting in front of people and speaking with people, and so the only way that I would get sort of satiated would be selling to, like, in the sales conversations. I think the big driver for me was, this is something that the scalability part was important, as well as that I think it could impact many. And so that was driving me with that. But it was a certain degree of need was not maybe that one-on-one interaction, because that's not really me, but one-to-many. And so I know that, like, through my reflection of it in hindsight, that sort of presenting to groups was a big driver of what would be good for me. And so ironically, like, coaching is a one-to-one. You can do one-to-many. That's more of a facilitator, though. And so, it was funny where I thought, it goes back to, like, sort of after that 6-month mark, it was, okay, this is starting to become a grind, and the day-to-day I'm not really enjoying, because it's really just going on LinkedIn or anything, trying to find anyone I know who knows someone in HR, a lot of ignored messages, a lot of called off meetings, a lot of unsuccessful meetings. And then you do have some success, and then you just ride this roller coaster. You're like, oh my God, it's amazing. And I do remember when we sold to University of Toronto Rotman for their entire program, and that was a huge win. And then the goal was sort of to go after a lot of other university programs. And
this is part of the Leadership Academy.
Yeah, so this is Discover. So we said, okay, so maybe companies aren't it. We're like, we just sold to a university, like, this could be it. And so then they sort of, you turn back on the potential of, like, how many universities and colleges. And the difficult sell to, again, universities is the money part, because the Career Center does not have much budget. So we really cut the price of our license to, try and make it work. And we had somewhat success, but basically at that point, again, that was sort of, again, because I was sort of an entrepreneur for 2 years. I was towards the end of it, and I was tired, burnt out, depleted. And I just remember sitting there at, ironically, at Starbucks with my co-founder, and we basically had a reality check. We said, okay, like, we have this much money coming in, like, not even one of us could sustain that. So, like, how long would it really take for us to get it to a point where we can actually live off of it while not working full time? And it was going to be, like, at least 3 years. And I remember we finished that, and I just walked away. I'm like, is this something do I really want to do this?
For another 3 years.
Yeah, if I... And I think that is almost a passion test right there, because I think someone insanely passionate would say yes, because this is a problem I want to solve. And that was the first time I realized I had an interest in this, but not a passion for it. And so I just remember that was around the holidays, I think, because I remember it was like, I was just like, let's just take the holiday break off and meet back in January. And I was like, I think I'm done with this. That's when I first started thinking. I remember I went to because our whole thing was, okay, let's start attacking the university market. So I went to this university career educator conference, and I went there. I just wasn't giving full effort, and I remember leaving being like, do I want to put myself out there again to that degree of what I went through trying to sell to HR? And a big part of it was just I wasn't really loving what I was doing the other day, and so...
Reminded you of audit?
Yeah. Honestly. Audit was soul-sucking. This was more of a draining... and so, yeah, that was when I had to have a difficult conversation with my co-founder, and I just remember just meeting up and letting him know I can't do this anymore. That you're gonna, like, it wasn't fair for him, for me, because I wasn't there. I wasn't giving 100%, and I said that I would support in a support capacity. And I remember really it was a tough reaction. He was certainly upset with me, but I remember I was like, let's just ride this out. And then we finished the conversation, and then after that I was in a bit of a limbo. I was still working, obviously paying the bills through working part-time at a startup. And then he actually would like try to email me, meet up every once in a while to get advice on certain things, but it still felt not right to really hang out with him. It was just like this. It's almost like akin to a breakup in a relationship where it's like the whole breakup but stay friends. It was just I knew that it was bringing up just bad feelings, and so I remember after a couple meetings I had to say it again. I'm like, Joel, I actually don't want to be involved in this at all. And that was again another difficult conversation because it's okay. Like, what do you mean? Like, how are we gonna? How am I gonna do this? Like, I thought you were gonna help me, and then it goes back to. Obviously, like, is there an equity split? Like, how do I get out of the business type of thing? And so just, again, more difficult conversations there. And, again, I'll spare the details. It eventually got resolved. But, I went from that to really nothing. And I was like, what the hell? Like, and to add it, it's where I was a goddamn career coach, right? So,
yeah, so
I don't know what I just remember, like, talking to my dad. And I'm like, I just like slammed, like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And he's like, but don't you help people do this? Like, isn't this your whole thing? And that's what made me feel like it was my mind boggling because I'm like, yeah, like I should know. And so that's when I was like, okay, like let's use all that knowledge the past 2 years, all that experience, and help myself find a job. And so I remember just trying to like go through my own coaching, and like first of all, coaching 101 is you can't coach yourself. Like, you're not supposed to. It's just, it doesn't work. But I was trying to like coach myself and find that ideal career. And I think that with my approach, the fault was that I was trying to find the perfect career and over analyzing what I needed and what I was looking for. And so it led me to a series of just meetings with, like, at one point I was applying for HR at, like, I think Johnson & Johnson, and it was that reality check. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And so I met up with, again, a quasi-informal mentor who was his name is Bill McLean, and he was the head of people at PwC. And the reason we had connected, because as I was leaving, he was a coach. And so it was just, we connected on me aspiring to be a coach and him having had his coaching degree. And that's where he was just sort of trying to help me through it and trying to sort of decomplicate my thoughts. I think that really what it was, I was just like, I should have just gone traveling or just take my mind off it. I was just thinking about it every day. And so I remember how #paid came into the picture was one of the investors I knew very well, and we were meening to grab lunch together because he's a really wealthy guy. So I'm like, okay, rich people kind of know what they're doing.
Was it just like a friend that you had on the side?
A family friend, yeah.
Okay, nice.
And so we were supposed to actually grab lunch back in December, and then always it kept getting pushed back to eventually about early April. And then finally we do, and then he's like, funny, because I'm like, I don't know what to do, and he's sort of trying to simplify it. He's like, well, what kind of stuff do you need? I'm like, well, I miss working with people, because as an entrepreneur, it's either me or Joel, or like I'd be working alone or working for people when I was coaching. I'm like, I want to be part of a team. He's like, okay, that's one part. And then I was like, what else? I'm like, I really want a goddamn office I can go to every day, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're working at coffee shops, like you can't afford any rent, or you're working at home alone. And I was like, I always remember, I was like, I want to just be at an office every day. And he's like, what else? And I was like, that's kind of it right now. I was like, that's what's screaming at me. And he's like, funny you say, he's like, I know you're a CA and like you're doing like, part-time accounting work, like, #paid's looking for like a head of finance. And I'm like, do I do numbers? Because, what I was doing part-time was somewhat brain-numbing work. Kind of like the audit side of things. Like, I was helping facilitate the audit, for example. It wasn't great work, and I was like, this is no. So I was like, do I really want to go back into accounting? Like, didn't my whole realization, my quarter life crisis say, like, get out of audit, get out of numbers? Yeah. And so I remember going to, again, Bill McLean, being like, so what had happened was I got an interview with Brian, the CEO. It's like, okay, I'll go meet up with him. And it was a cool, a cool startup, and it was an interesting concept of this, creator marketing, influencer marketing, and Brian was a really cool CEO, and I was like, that's cool, but still, like, head of finance, and so I remember talking to Bill, we're having a beer, and I'm like, well, maybe I can do like HR at PwC or something, and he said, Jordan, he's like, I've tried to be facilitatory too, but this one I'm just gonna tell you straight up, you should do this job. You're not an HR person. And I'll tell you bluntly, like, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, a lot of what HR is that you're executing the strategy that the people set. And he's like, this job is for you, just trust me. And I was like, all right. So I remember I was like, not fully convicted. So I said, all right, signed away. And it was interesting within the first month, really, that like when I joined, it was ironically what I wanted when I thought I'd become a CA was that just being a businessman, sort of making decisions and being a person of influence. There was no other numbers person at the company. So immediately they were asking me about stuff like that would make an impact. And so it was what I thought I wanted when they sort of sell you on audit. Just being, you can run the world with numbers. And so it was great. And I also was able, the CEO was really keen on what I was doing as a coach. He had said, I wouldn't have hired you if you had just come from like the Big Four. So it's sort of like, okay, there was a purpose in all the suffering type of thing. And also he appreciated that I was a former entrepreneur. And I do think it certainly helps, especially because I realized that I enjoy supporting an entrepreneur, not being the entrepreneur. And so just being able to sort of empathize with them when sort of living that entrepreneur roller coaster. And so I felt that throughout that whole journey has helped me become a better sort of head of finance. Like you said, like if you looked at my job now or my first job, you would have thought, okay, traditional, but I did take the non-traditional route. But it helped me, obviously, especially with a startup, the interpersonal aspects. We're just a bunch of humans trying to do something. And it's amazing how often the human part interferes with the execution of a strategy. And so really trying to design strategy that fits with humans. And so where I find that a lot of my coaching facilitation has actually helped. And to fact, I've actually run workshops on Myers-Briggs here, which has been really helpful. So there has been some purpose there. And so it's been interesting how there has been, it wasn't just all for nothing type of thing.
Yeah. And so now if we get into, what you actually do then, how would you describe your role? Like, is there a distinct split between this is what I do as VP of Finance and this is what I do as like VP of Ops, or how do you look at it?
Well, it's interesting because I would have thought that when I first went in. And so I originally was the VP of Finance, but then I took on a more operational role too. And really there's, so financials, one part of it's always like the financial statement is always historical. It's what happened, right? And for a startup, that's not really that helpful because you're always changing, things are happening quick. And so there's okay, what's going to happen? And that's where the operations side comes in, where you, again, using the forecast, you have to predict what the future is, but the operational lens is that, does that reflect reality? And so having to work with all of the team leads and department heads to say, okay, like how can we quantify or have that element of prediction of what that is and tying that into what would be then the forecast, so then we can say, okay, like when are we going to run out of cash? Because that's really like inherently every startup problem is that when are we going to run out of cash? What can we do about it? And so that's where that operations part comes in with things like key performance indicators. And so that part has been really enjoying. That's become more of a new part of my role. So at first I was the finance guy. I helped them raise the Series A. So we raised $9 million back in May. And then from there, it's once you have money, it's sort of what do you do with it, how do you measure it, and how do you maximize the performance of a company. So I would say that in a long-winded answer, it blends, and that's what it's supposed to happen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And just on the raising of the fund side, so this is just more of a personal curiosity of mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think like in our first conversation we talked about how my background is I'm an investor and
Yeah.
I like investing, and lately I've been talking to a lot of venture folks because I wanted to get into like private investing.
Yeah.
And I think being an angel and angel investing, it just became more apparent. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you want to go to a hedge fund? Okay, well, you should start a public stock portfolio. So I run my own public stock portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And it also became, why do you want to do a venture capital fund? Oh, I don't really want to manage anyone else's money. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
invest in private companies.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't I just do that right now? So if I was an angel and you guys were raising a Series B, is it possible that I can get in, or is that only exclusively like venture capital guys?
Yeah, at this stage, it would just be venture capital. So we only allowed for Series A institutional investors, so those with a certain net worth, and at least the minimum buy-in was $50,000. But if you go earlier at the seed stage, so the evolution for financing is that you start off with friends and family, and then you get an angel round, which is okay, maybe people you don't know, and then you have a seed round, which is a blend of maybe rich people or institutional firms, and then Series A, which is really just venture capitalists, and then B, C, and onwards. And when you get C or D, those are the big boys. Those are like SoftBank and those really big Silicon Valley funds. There's very few Series B funds in Canada, even. I think Omer's is the only one.
Yeah, I think Omer's, and I think Georgian might do a few Series B as well.
Yeah, and so they've actually just moved money to Canada because of all the activity there. And so, there's tons of Series A players, and the success of them is again, I think that there's some people who really know what they're doing. There's a lot of people who don't, but they convince people to give them money, and it makes results. But yeah, so if you did want to, the angel stages, and there's a lot of angel syndicates, so the angels will pull their money together, so then they can then allocate that towards funds, because you obviously don't want to put all your eggs in one basket type of thing. So if you syndicate with 50 others, and then you can sprinkle that into various angel startups.
Yeah, I've been looking at the syndicates too. I think like things on like AngelList, for example, I can't just because I'm not an accredited investor, so not enough capital for that.
Yeah, well, if you get early enough, keep hanging around incubators.
That's probably it. Just nudge people and say, hey, you need money. Yeah. And so then, in terms of your role itself, like if you were to describe your day today, like we're recording at the end of the day, so kind of walk me through your schedule today. This is a Tuesday, so what did you do as of the morning? Like, what time does your meeting start? Like, what do you do when you get in?
Yeah, so I'll get in obviously before 9. It's just so important to get in before the madness hits to plan your day. I think that I really focus on planning the priorities of my day. This week has been interesting because I have a board meeting tomorrow, so I really had to tie up loose ends with the board meeting. And again, for those who aren't familiar with boards with startups, but again, it's as the head of finance, there's a lot of requests for information, so it's compiling the information, presenting it to people. And obviously, individuals spreadsheets aren't the best way to tell a story, so you have to really try and visualize it, or at least capture it in a more captivating way. And so today, that was a large part of it. I also manage a team of 4. And so what I've been doing today, so with one of my direct reports, we're trying to define what success means in that role. So that was our office manager. And what I was having trouble, because we're trying to transition from, we'll call our culture described as a type family, to a sports-based culture, or as like a team-based culture, like a sports team. Because with families, like, yes, you're close, but with the sports team, is that holding each other accountable for performance. And so if you really want to win in this space, it's a dogfight. And so the best way to do it is to make sure that we facilitate and encourage high performance. And so that's been a really big theme for us coming out of our management offsite. And so what I'm trying to do with all my direct reports is, okay, we just totally whiteboard, what does success mean being a general accountant, a head of people, an office manager, a recruiter, and whiteboard it and say, okay, so helping them in their own words describe it, and we work together on, okay, these are the main things that have to be successful in your role. How do we categorize it? And then from there, how do we measure it? And so the goal is to really come out with this document that says, this is me, Jane Doe. This is what success means in my role. This is how we measure it. And then we sign off on that, and then we track that, and that's part of performance. We measure quarterly, but we track weekly. And so that's the goal. So again, is it the right thing? I don't know yet, but that's one thing. So a big chunk I had to do today. Another one was working with our head of sales and the sales forecast. So, in startup land, you have very aggressive growth targets. So it's how do you measure it? And for me, it's okay, we can take the vision, but we really need to translate it to what does that mean for cash flow? What does that mean for hiring? What does it mean for any other resource allocation? How much money can we give to marketing? And so from there, it's just, okay, is this actually an achievable target? Working with their head of sales, and really then from there, it's on me to make sure, okay, working with each team lead to say, okay, if we submit our 2019 budget to the board, is this most appropriate? Because once you submit it, you're kind of getting judged based on that, right? Your budget to actual. So that's been a big project for me. Like any head of finance, Q4, that's a big theme of it. And then the next thing I did was really we're trying to launch our KPIs, our key performance indicators, and it's a concept that's simple but goddamn difficult to implement because this is our third run through of it because KPIs are things that move the needle for the company, and so it's easy to find data to track, but is it the right data to track? And will it rally people around that goal? And so that's been the difficulty, and it's so easy just to get caught in the details and think, oh, well, if we have these 10, that's what it works out to be. So that's been the challenge for me right now. So I'm sort of working with each sort of team lead on that. So that was my day today. So
nice.
Some projects, some meetings, and yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like just staring at Excel screens all day.
No.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Very few of my day actually is accounting. And other than at month end when I'm consolidating and sort of reviewing some of the transactions, but it's like 15% of my day would be traditional accounting. Yeah, a lot of it is just forecasting and more operational stuff. So it's funny how like when you're an auditor, you think that's what accounting or that's what finance is, but that's a scratching the surface. And it's funny, like I'm really like when our auditor comes, I'm like to my general account, like you're the one building the schedules and dealing with it. I don't want to deal with it. And so I remember, and you remember this when you're an auditor, like you're like, why do I never see the CFO? It's because they're like, I can't be bothered with this stuff. It's like in the past, it's audit, it's tying stuff up. You're so forward in the future and focusing on future stuff. So it kind of solves that question I had when I was 22, 23.
Yeah. Would you say your experience right now, though, is more atypical of a startup VP of finance, or is it more in line with what your other peers?
I think that there's rocks that are in line with it. I think any startup role is up to you to craft that role. So I think that I've taken on obviously overseeing the people side of things probably because of my coaching past, but there are some people who want to carve their own specialty. Maybe I'm just the forecaster, or they happen to just be in accounting and they're not as strategic. So I think that there are sort of various degrees of consistency, and one of the main consistencies is that people just throw stuff at you and you're not going to know a lot. Like we have a Slack group for tech leaders in Toronto, tech finance leaders in Toronto. And it's all just us helping each other, because the reason we made it is because a lot of people don't, like, you're thrown like, okay, so we have to hire 2 employees in the state of Pennsylvania. Okay, and this is not me, but this is someone who actually had that, and it was the group, like, how do we do it? Like, okay, well, have you filed a Pennsylvania this form? It's just these things where, like, it's not repetitive. These are like one-off things, or, anything under the roof is absolutely, like, there's a lot of random things that'll come across that you're sort of supposed to be. So, like right now, we're trying to renegotiate our lease, and we run into some complications. One of them being that people have tracked the rental market in the past 5 years. It has gone up astronomically. So now I'm trying to negotiate with the landlord because they want to raise rates like upwards of 25%, which is insane. And so I get that news today. So it's like, okay, great. That sucks. But then another random high is that we found the results that we were a recipient of $1 million grant. And so there's some roller coasters that you can ride in startup land. It's certainly never just an even keel throughout the day. And so certainly keeping things in perspective and stress management are 2 important characteristics you need, especially as head of finance, because you see all the numbers.
Yeah, you kind of see all the dirt and the good stuff too, I guess. Like no one will know, but you'll know. Oh, we're gonna go down under, or we're gonna be fine.
Well, yeah. If the finance person leaves at a startup, then obviously really raise your ears and eyes. But things are well here though at #paid. So
no, good to hear. And so then, when you were near the end of the coaching journey, you were talking about how you realize that now there's more an interest. It's not a passion. I'm sick of it. I want to do something different. What do you feel at #paid, like doing what you do? Like, have you ever asked yourself similar questions?
I think what I've tried to do with #paid is not quick to put a label on myself. So when I was at PwC, I'm an auditor, or I want to be an audit partner. That's the next thing up. And then it was coaching. I'm a coach, and this is the thing. I'm going to do this coaching, right? For me, since day one, it's been, let's just be perceptive with what we do. Don't plan for something, but just like, okay, this seems interesting. Oh, that's not interesting. And then really try and let that foundation of awareness build the next step. And I could say that, yes, for the foreseeable future, certainly enjoying what I'm doing. was there stressful days, of course, but is any job that isn't? And if it's stressful, then it's probably a challenging role, which is something I enjoy doing. And then really, if it once just trying to plan, more in the 1 to 3 year range versus that 10 to 15 year range, because things change so much in that scope, especially in this career landscape. And so it's what are the other cool shit that I want to do at PDC or at #paid and be responsible for? And so that's where I'm seeing the lens. So the thing we're introducing KPIs, I was I really want to try that out and be responsible for that. And so we'll see what that leads to.
Yeah, no, sounds great. Kind of just now in the final parts of the interview, the questions that I ask all guests is, so the first question is, if your 20-year-old self, so 20-year-old Jordan, in probably third year Laurier, was to look at you right now doing what you do, what do you think the emotional reaction would be?
I mean, without context in the middle, he would be really happy. Be holy crap! That's sort of what I probably wanted to do. Always just sort of being in a leadership capacity with the finance blend is something that were certainly the things I wanted, and I thought I would get at PwC. And so, certainly happy with it.
Yeah, and then what kind of advice do you wish you had? You could have given yourself when you were 20.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's really just don't try to rush growing up. Just let it happen. I think that it's you want to be in a position to have a leadership role and make change and make impact, and I guess advance in your career. And certainly when I was 20, I was hungry for, and maybe impatient. And I think over analyzing small sample sizes. So, just ride the waves of your career and just take the longer, broader approach. And from there is say, am I generally enjoying what I'm doing? So, great piece of feedback on terms of just simplifying. And this is what Bill McLean gave me. He says there's 2 questions I ask, and it's something that I ask myself too: is am I learning and am I contributing? So it doesn't matter what role that definition is, because you don't want to define yourself as I'm a finance person. It's just, am I learning and am I contributing? And it's something too that I even heard from another. So the CFO of Top Hat, Ralph Reeders, is a brilliant man. He's an engineer. He has no CA background, but he's the CFO of one of the most successful Toronto startups at the moment. And he just said, I became a head of finance because I was just solving problems. And then that problem eventually led to being that CFO. But he's like, I'm not a CFO. I don't label myself that. I'm just a problem solver. And so it's just making sure you don't have that just role lens, right? Just go more deeper and more visceral of, what specifically am I doing? And so that gut check of learning and contributing has definitely served me well. Is it the be-all end-all piece of advice? Maybe not, but it's something that I would probably tell my 20-year-old self.
Yeah, no, excellent. And now I got to have the CFO of Top Hat on the podcast. Now I got to interview him.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your time, Jordan. This was a lot of fun. And I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, and for some of the listeners who want to be getting paid as influencers, how can they get in contact with #paid?
Go to www.hashtagpaid, so HASHTAG, #paid.com. Sign up as an influencer, and you'll sign your profile up. And if you are a great influencer, you'll likely get contacted by us to do a deal with a large brand.
Excellent. All right, great. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, for sure. Take care.
So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please check out other episodes, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date for the future episodes. Also, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, whichever is applicable to you. To see past episodes, you can go to oldmandan.com/podcasts. Also, you can sign up to my weekly newsletter on my blog, oldmandan.com/newsletter. You can stay up to date with future podcast episodes that way, and included in the newsletter are my book reviews I write, my weekly article in the related to the domain of self-development systems, as well as 7 things I learned throughout the week on being healthy, wealthy, and wise. Finally, special thanks to icons8.com for allowing me to use their music, Tiny People, on the podcast. Great. I will see you all next time. Take care.